Hogstye.
It is the Washington Redskins MVP's birthday today, so I hope you have a happy birthday, Tress Way, because you're the only player we have who's decent on this team.
52 other players are now mad at us. Thanks.
Whatever. We are actually going to be doing our pre-draft spectacular show. It's going to be a little less spectacular because the news has been a little quiet this week, but we do have something planned for you, and we're going to start out with this. You guys know we've had a lot of guests on the last month, and we've mentioned that we're doing this on the show. We asked all of our guests from the last 7 episodes to give us a hot take for something that'll happen in the draft. So with that, I'm going to start playing these up for you. We have Steve Shoup, Robbie Duncan, Robert Henson, Zach Hicks, Manny Benton, Mark Tyler, and Jordan Reed. And here are all their hot takes for you to start the show. Steve Shoup, what is your wild card thing that's going to happen that no one else is expecting to happen in this draft?
Ooh, well, I will say that is a tough question, but I will say that the Redskins.
We put you on the spot here.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think there will be. I don't know if it's wild card, but I do think they trade back. I mean, that's my number one hot take. Is I think they're trading back from 2. I absolutely believe that's the most likely scenario is that they trade back from 2. So I don't know if that's hot enough. My other hot take would be they draft at least 2, if not 3 defensive backs, because I don't think Redskins fans understand how thin their secondary is right now.
Now, see, that's a new one. That's one no one's thrown out there yet, is multiple DBs.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. So, Robbie, give us your wild card, your hot take for this draft. What's something that you think the Redskins will do or you think will happen that isn't kind of on anyone's radar?
In regards to the Redskins, hot take wise, I think they're sticking to their guns and taking Chase Young at 2. I think they're going to try to trade back. If they don't get the deal that they want, then they'll take Chase Young. My draft hot take in general, though, I would say is I would not touch Tua at all, especially not in the first round. Yes.
For health reasons or other reasons?
Health reasons. Not because of play. I mean, when he's healthy, he's great. I mean, we've all seen what Tua can do.
Right.
But in my opinion, the injury histories and the background he has with some serious injuries, I think he's just one of those guys that's just always going to be hurt. Always. I think he's going to be just like what Andrew Luck was for the Colts. Mm-hmm. You know, he's going to do some great things, show some great flashes, but he's always going to be battling some kind of injury. You know, his ankles are a serious problem. The hip is a serious problem. You know, and that's all from playing college ball. Imagine what's going to happen from playing NFL ball, you know, a full season if he can. I don't think he's going to be healthy enough to have a good career.
He's not the biggest guy in the world either.
No.
That's not going to help him.
So that's my take, is that Tua is the next Andrew Luck in regards to elite quarterback play, but always injured.
Rob, you were real generous with your time today, but we're going to go ahead and get you with this draft bold prediction. Let's go ahead and hear it, man. What do you think is a bold prediction? What do you expect, or what do you predict that will happen come April and draft day?
Well, I honestly think that although they said Kerrigan's staying, I think he could be a draft day trade or traded previously, or prior to the draft, for a pick or whatever the case may be. So I think that's really my bold prediction. I think they say he's staying, but I just can't see a world with Chase, RK, Sweat. That's a little too much for me. So I think he's the odd man out come draft day. I think they'll trade him.
All right, so we're gonna stick it with let's say the draft day trader Ryan Kerrigan.
Draft day trader Ryan Kerrigan.
All right.
That's a bold one. That is a bold prediction, man, because I know Dan Snyder loves him.
They'll get back into the second round with that trade.
Okay.
And I think they may pick a running back or linebacker.
I like it. That's a bold prediction. I like it.
Sure.
So, whatever you think is your big hot take, your big point, what do you want people to know about the draft?
Surprise, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys want it to be like draft hot take or like just overall draft hot take?
Draft.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whew.
It's a surprise. Sorry.
Let's see, man. I got a couple. I'm kind of one of those hot take guys on Twitter. Just throws all the hot takes out there, and that's how I get my likes now. Man, I'm trying to think of like a really good one. I mean, I don't know how much of a hot take it is anymore, but I've said it since like September. I think Henry Ruggs is going to be the first receiver taken in this class. I don't know if that's really hot anymore because I feel like people are kind of getting on there after that combine. Let's see.
Yeah, he is a combine crush now, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was my crush back in September, man.
You run a 4.27 or whatever, you're going to become a lot of people's crushes.
Yeah.
I'll say 4 quarterbacks in the top 8 will be kind of my
Wow.
Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Tua, and Joe Burrow in the top 8.
Wow. So I'm assuming you're seeing a lot of trades going on. Is what you're thinking?
No, let's move up. I think. Let's see, which teams could I think of? It would be Miami and Cincy, obviously, are going to go quarterback, and then we'll go Carolina and Indy trade up there for
Lions. Replace Stafford, maybe?
No, I don't think they're there yet. I think soon, though, but I don't think they're there yet. I think they're going to get Okuda, someone like that, and thrive.
Yeah. I mean, well, their coach is on the hot seat. They don't want to make the mistake the Redskins made.
Yeah, you can't get rid of Stafford when you're on the hot seat. You know, you can't get rid of a known commodity who's pretty solid, and when you're on the hot seat. But yeah, 4 back to the top 8. We'll see. That probably won't happen, but I wanna see it. It'll be fun.
Manny, give me a bold prediction for this draft when it happens.
All right. So I know I mentioned the potential of drafting like an offensive tackle high, but how about this? I think the Redskins in the 3rd round they take a running back, and I'm going to go with I'll say DeAndre Swift.
Okay. Jamal,
like
you seem excited by that.
Yeah, man. Out of all the positions, I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, of course. Like I have my feelings about the running back position right now. So
yeah,
Manny hit a home run with that one in my eyes.
So, Mark, what would your unexpected wild prediction for this draft be on draft day?
So, I think from the Redskins' perspective that Trent is not going to be traded until draft day. I think it's going to be a draft day trade. I think that we're going to see teams try to fill needs through free agency, and it's going to come really down to a team wanting Trent, and we're going to package him together on draft day to move him. Now, is it going to be we package him plus the number 2 overall pick for a bounty of picks, or is it going to be something that we wait till the first round is over, we see how many tackles are off the board, and then we ended up moving Trent before round 2 starts? It could be one of both. But I think that's going to happen. I think a lot of people are, anxious to see what's going to happen with Trent, and why aren't we moving him right now? I think it's going to happen on draft day.
I actually like that prediction.
Yeah, that's a hot take for sure. That's a new one. Most people are, I think, expecting him to go sooner than that. That's a good one.
All right, Jordan Reed, what is something that you think will happen that you aren't seeing everywhere?
That's what we're looking for, though. Hot take.
This probably isn't going to be true, but I'll just say it. Chase Young, they don't select Chase Young. They just go in the opposite direction, and they take Isaiah Simmons with the 2nd overall pick. So I'll just say that.
See, finally someone agrees with me. Finally.
So you gave Steve too much juice with that one.
Yeah.
You just got through telling us though that Chase is a better prospect. So I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing if they pick the lesser prospect. But I'm just happy that finally somebody agrees with me. Thank God.
So guys, this was a fun idea that I want to give Jamal credit. He kind of came up with this one. Jamal, like you kind of said, hey, let's try this, and we just loaded up on guests. Worked out well with, all the other news going on in the world that kind of made this offseason a little quieter than we wanted. So what did you guys think? Are there any takes that stood out to you? Jamal, we'll start with you.
There were two. The first one, obviously, was the running back selection in the third round. We know how I kind of feel. I've said it 1,002 times. I do think that this running back position has all the name talent in the world, but you can't really just go off names when you're dealing with people with injury histories. We can't call them injury prone, but you know what I'm saying. That's just one of the things that we're stuck with. That's the reality of our situation. You got a 33 or 34-year-old Adrian Peterson, and he's the most consistent and reliable running back. The only thing that's in his way is his age. That's the first one. The second one was the Isaiah Simmons thing. I do think it's not a bad pick. It is not a bad pick, but given that, well, first off, I will say this is probably the most unlikeliest one because of the fact that Joe Burrow is sitting right there in the Bengals' face. Given the situation in the world, the safest thing for them to do is pick the quarterback. Mm-hmm. So I will say this is the most unlikeliest, but I will say Isaiah Simmons is very you can't go wrong picking him at number 2. You still can't go wrong picking him at number 2. He's worth the number 2 pick. So Isaiah Simmons at number 2 is the second one that stood out to me.
Okay, first of all, Alex is your host. That was Jamal.
Yeah, sure.
I'm Steve. We forgot to introduce ourselves. Some of these were. First of all, thanks to all these guests for coming on. We had one scheduled for today that fell through, and that happens sometimes.
Hey, 7 out of 8 ain't bad.
Yeah, really, because we've been stood up before. This guy didn't stand us up; it just didn't work out. So, to those guests who stood us up, you know who you are. I'm still mad at you. Okay. Anyway, so hot take wise, the one I agreed with most was Jordan Reed, and Jamal just mentioned it. Don't take Chase Young. Take Isaiah Simmons. I mean, I've been preaching this for God knows how long now. So I agree with that one. I like that one the most. I don't know if it's going to happen, and we'll get to that. I think maybe the most hot takey kind of thing that nobody's thought about is what Robert Henson mentioned. Rob talked about trading Ryan Kerrigan on draft day. That's completely out of left field. Nobody's mentioned that. I kind of see his logic, though, because if you're really going to draft Chase Young, I mean, quite frankly, the difference in performance in the first couple of years is not going to be much between Kerrigan and Young. And I kind of sort of agree at this point about why have both on the roster. We've got a couple backups that are good. So that's an interesting thought. It would be totally out of left field. The reason why it probably won't happen is that's a very un-Dan Snyder-like thing to do. But definitely the one I agreed with the most was Jordan's.
I mean, I think the draft day trades of Kerrigan and both Trent Williams as well, let's just put them both out there. It from a team-building standpoint, it makes too much damn sense to get rid of them because they're both on the backside of they're over 30 now. They're on big contracts. And if you're really going to do a rebuild, which I know they don't want to say they are, but they are, it makes way more sense to say, all right, let's move these guys for more assets. You don't keep Kerrigan just so he can break a record. I think that's silly. And I know that's
what
part
Dan
of
Snyder might do, though.
Right, I know. And that's why it's silly.
And I think it's unfortunate, too. I do want to say that I really like that one, too, by Henson. But, it's just something that I kind of had in the back of my head. Like, it's another thing that's unlikely, but at the same time, I 100% agree with Alex. You just can't. You really can't just keep it off the strength of nostalgia. Like, I don't know if that's going to bode well. Well, I mean, it's nothing wrong with keeping him. He's still he's an okay player.
Mm-hmm. You were about to say good, and then you remembered your mantra is that you hate him.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I can say that because of who. Like, I don't know if I can just right now, given the situation. Like, I don't know, but I 100% agree with Alex, basically. But trading him on draft day is probably the least pleasant and appealing, and least appealing and least pleasant thing to happen for a Redskins fan and Dan Snyder.
And although I will say one more thing about that, I think you probably could get more value out of Ryan Kerrigan right now than Trent Williams, given the contract situations and the disputes and all that kind of bad blood.
I mean, I think Trent in a lot of ways has killed his own value. With all this nonsense, you know, I think as a player, he's worth a second-round pick. And by the way, I totally agree with Mark. I didn't mention it, but Mark is 100% right. I think they're definitely going to trade Trent on draft day.
At this point, they're going to try to, Yeah.
I mean, I just didn't mention it for whatever reason, but I think he's right. I think Trent has actually harmed his value. That whole interview with the agent came across as ridiculous, I thought, that he did for 106.7. Thought that hurt his value. He's been immensely uncooperative, all that, you know, a pain in the butt, all that stuff. I don't think that really lends itself to teams wanting to trade for him. That having been said, the trade hope du jour has been Tampa and O.J. Howard for some combination of Trenton picks. That's what the Redskins fan base have been dreaming about this week. And listen, I mean, that's not a bad thing. That would be a great thing.
It's not a terrible
I'm not saying
option.
Trent for Howard straight up. That's not value, but like Trent for Howard plus some picks. Yes, Howard has been a disappointment. For those of you who don't remember, this O.J. Howard was supposed to be the next big tight end thing.
Right.
You know, and he didn't really live up to it. That having been said, he had Jameis Winston as his quarterback, you know, who's a complete train wreck. So,
with 30 touchdowns.
With 33 interceptions.
I mean, I'm sorry, 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions.
Yeah, there you go. Either one, I'll take it in terms of helping my argument. I just think Jameis is a train wreck, and if you put him in a more stable situation, he hasn't been terrible stats-wise. He's got a completion percentage, or a catch percentage of like 64%, I think, on a career.
So not bad.
He's still very athletic. He's been injured some.
Jameis is throwing him the football pretty well, you know.
Jameis is a train wreck, and I wouldn't let him in my house, much less my football, my football arena. I'm just not a Jameis Winston fan. I'm just not.
Yeah.
It's always going to be pushed back on my end.
I know. I get it. I just think he's too much of a. He's just too immature. I don't know. I don't want to get into Jameis Winston. Your point is, I think that's not a bad idea. It would solve a tight end problem. You get another pick back. You know. Also, I think
you probably aren't getting a second rounder at that point, though. You're probably dropping to the fourth rounder.
Well, whatever. Yeah. No. Certainly not. But listen, the Bucs have little Tommy Brady as their new quarterback. And
they need to protect him.
And they have a massive problem at left tackle. So it makes a ton of sense from that perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think if we some other things that people mentioned. Shoop with needing depth at corner. I'm trying to remember who we had at that point. I know we had already drafted or signed Fuller. I don't think we'd made that other cornerback move.
Ronald Darby.
No, I don't think we had made that move yet when we had Shoop on. But still.
Still needed depth. I agree.
Yeah, I think two corners might be realistic.
A well thought out bold prediction.
Yeah, I mean, they still might do that. They still need desperate help. Ronald Darby is not the solution. I hope he is. But counting on Ronald Darby to be the solution when he's had a combination of injury and poor performance over the years, I mean, it's kind of, he's a lottery ticket to a certain extent. He's got a lot of natural athletic ability, but that doesn't mean he's the answer. They desperately need a high-end corner. Jeff Okudah would be great on this team. In a vacuum, I would be ecstatic if we pick Jeff Okudah somehow.
But I mean, I look at where we've had success drafting corners the last few years. We get a lot, like 3 of our last good corners we've picked up have been 4th round and back. You look at Breland, you look at Dunbar was undrafted. These were quality draft picks overall.
But the last first-round corner we picked was probably Chase Champ Haley.
No, Carlos Rogers.
Yeah,
which was a bust of all busts.
He wasn't terrible, and that was a long time ago.
It was kind of terrible.
I mean, he underperformed for sure. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but we haven't really taken a lot of corners at the top of the draft. And we took Sean Taylor, the safety. We took Mr. Muscles, Laron Landry.
We've taken round. A lot of those guys.
Emerson was the second round.
There you go, David Emerson. He was a gigantic bust.
Yeah.
But in terms of corners, we haven't taken a lot of corners. Fabian Moreau is really the only one, and he was
Emerson a corner or safety? Yeah, I thought he was a corner. Emerson that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about corners and corners.
Both
in the high end of the draft.
So, So Emerson is a corner, right? Yeah, I couldn't remember for some reason.
Is Alex that just because Bashaud Breeland turned out to be good is no excuse for not taking high end, top of the draft corner if the situation warrants. That's what I'm saying. Jeff Okudah is an elite prospect.
Yeah, I mean, at number 2, there are 3 or 4 really good elite defensive players that we can pick. And, that's kind of where the Redskins are. So let's kind of move on. And, I mean, since we already heard the, pro wild card opinions and hot takes, why don't we give our bold predictions now for the draft? And we'll start with Steve on this one.
Okay. Bold prediction. I guess we'll start with the Redskins' bold prediction.
Sure.
See, there's a difference between what I think is going to happen and what I want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to happen is a bold prediction. What I think is going to happen is pretty boring. I think what do you want? Do you want my prediction?
This is your bold prediction segment. The mock draft, who you take is later.
Right. Okay. My bold prediction is that Tua drops in the draft.
Tua drops?
Tua drops. I think a lot of teams are going to redline him, because he's got very serious health problems. You guys can close your eyes about it because he's from Alabama and he's, by all accounts, a great leader and a great guy and all that. But this dude may need a hip replacement someday. He's had multiple ankle injuries. Didn't he break his wrist at one point in time early in his career?
Like that.
Yeah, he's a injury red line waiting to happen, and I think he drops. I don't know if Shoop is right when he said, who was it? It was Zach Hicks that said 4 quarterbacks in the top 8. Right. I also don't think Jordan Love is worth a top 8 pick. So I think Tua drops, and somebody may overdraft Jordan Love, but they shouldn't. So I actually think we're talking 2 quarterbacks in the top 8.
Okay, Jamal, what about you?
Give me a little bit more time.
Okay, I'll do my bold prediction, and I'm going to keep mine Redskins related. I think we will not be able to trade Trent Williams for a second, and they'll keep holding on to him up
Stretch
until
out
maybe
the pain a little longer. Like keep that needle under the
because I think they're like he's worth this. No, you're not going to get that for him at this point. So here's what I think the Redskins are going to do is I think they're going to trade that number 2 pick in the 3rd round for multiple thirds and a 4th. That kind of like. Trade weight to the back end of the 3rd round and pick up a bunch more picks there.
That's a hot take for sure.
Yeah, or bold prediction, hot take, whatever you want to call it. A hot prediction, bold take.
All right, Jamal, you're up, man. Think on your feet, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, well, while Jamal's still thinking about it, here's my problem with your hot take, Alex.
We could go to the vote. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it, but I mean, my concern with your hot take is that they already only have 2 picks in the top 3 rounds, and so you're going to go like almost 2 and almost 3 full rounds without another pick after number 2.
Right.
If they keep number 2 and trade and do as you suggest and trade, what is that?
Out of
66?
the mid, we're saying basically you trade out of like the low to mid 60s into the 80s or 90s.
And that's a big gap.
Yeah.
That's a really big gap.
I understand
it's
that.
harder and harder to find starters as you go down the draft. I'm going to have a new draft article coming out this week
about that. Sure.
Yeah, but I promise it won't be so data intensive. Only thing I looked at is. I've done the research, haven't written it yet. Mm-hmm. The only thing I looked at is how many quote-unquote starters you find in rounds 3 through 7.
Sure.
That's the preview. So I just think it's tough if they do what you're suggesting. I get it. makes sense.
I mean,
I don't
it's
know
more
how
of a
much I like
desperation move that you can't trade Trent, so you do this instead.
Yeah.
That's
All right,
kind of what
Jamal,
I'm thinking.
We've vamped long enough. You're
Yeah.
up.
So the Patriots need a quarterback. Even though I do kind of think that Stidham. I wouldn't say that he's going to be really good, but I do think Stidham has some juice to him.
Mm-hmm.
So he may have something to say about this, but I do think the Patriots need a quarterback, and what the Patriots would do is actually, I don't know what number in the 20s they pick, but I would say there's a quarterback that'll slide in the top, but somewhere in the 12 to 15 range, and they'll trade up and take a quarterback, and I think that quarterback will either be, I think that quarterback will either be Herbert or Tua. So I think they trade up because the value is too good at that point, and they take one of the rookie quarterbacks in Justin Herbert or Tua. Last name
Tagliavoa.
I'm not even going to try it. I'm not going to disrespect that man last name.
I think that's a pretty good thought. You know, I think Tua is the type of guy that Belichick would take a flyer on, especially in the 20 whatever pick he is.
If he drops that far, sure. But I think Jamal's saying more they trade up into the top 5
that's
somewhere.
What I'm saying. They see Herbert and Tua there in that 12 to 15 range.
Okay.
And they trade up into the 12 to 15 range to take that.
Okay.
It's still not a bad idea. I mean, Herbert's just a flat out lesser prospect, but he's obviously been healthy
and safer, I'd say. Yeah.
I don't know if he's safer in that he'll be on the field, but I don't think he's a better quarterback. Herbert's got a lot of WTF moments. Like, what in the heck are you thinking?
Yeah, I remember you posted something on Twitter
about from my quarterback preview. Is where that came from.
Was that from your quarterback preview?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but kind of comparing Herbert to Haskins a lot, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, from a couple of days ago. It was one of the local media or maybe national media members said, "Here's your hypothetical. If Haskins, Tua, and Herbert were all in the same draft, how would you rank them?"
Right.
And my answer to that was I'd redline Tua. At 2, and you're at number 2. And I'd redline Tua, and I think Haskins is a better prospect than Herbert because he's got a much better arm, very smart, very successful in college, and Herbert's just way too inconsistent. So of those 3, I would have gone Haskins, Herbert, and then I wouldn't pick Tua at all at 2. That was what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I was referring. Yeah. I had a scatterbrained week, as you know. So let's move on to some other topics. Steve, I know we did a poll about the 3rd round pick, which I already mentioned. So why don't you read through the poll and let's kind of vamp on that, and it can also lead to our next thing, which is our predictions for the first round and 3rd round.
Okay. First of all, I only had this poll up for a few hours, so sorry, people, because I know some of you guys love this poll thing we do. It's my fault. I just completely zoned on the poll. So anyway, so for those few of you who voted, thank you. So here's the question. Assuming the Redskins keep the number 2 pick and recognizing that they might but have not yet traded Trent Williams, what's your draft strategy for round 3, pick 2 for the Redskins? I think Alex already gave us his draft strategy, but the options I used, thanks to hashtag Twitter limitations, are left tackle no matter what, tight end, wide receiver or other playmaker, or for the close-minded of the bunch, the only strategy is BPA. Those are the 4 options, and so as we usually do, let's go for what we think the fans will vote for and what we think. Since Alex already gave half of his, let's just start with Alex.
All right.
And you expand on it.
Okay, so, I mean, you know what I said about trading back, but I'm going to say the fans, because they're fans, are going to say BPA, because that's what we all love, is just take the best player and don't worry about a roster, that early. And of your options, I actually go left tackle. If we still haven't figured out the Trent situation, haven't made any big trades, and somehow landed a left tackle in the 2nd round or somehow late 1st, I think you got to prioritize a left tackle.
Okay, Jamal, what do you think?
Best player available, is what I think the fans would say. For me, I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix of best player available at a position of need. So personally, I would think that. So my answer would be best player available. That would be my answer as well. But I think it'll be a mix. So you'll see them target a position, whether it's tight end, whether it's receiver, whether it's cornerback, whether it's tackle.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll, whatever it is on their draft board, they'll look at that particular position and they'll see, okay, does this talent match up with, is it worth that versus this position? Is it worth that? And then they'll go from there.
Okay. First of all, the fans, you guys know the fans. They voted the only strategy is BPA because that's what fans do. It was a fairly large vote, 58%. Second place was something that none of us mentioned, which was wide receiver, other playmaker. That got 20% of the vote.
I'm surprised by that, but well, I shouldn't be.
No, I wasn't that surprised. And then left tackle and tight end were actually tied at 11% each. For me, I'm with Alex. I would have voted left tackle no matter what. I just think, it's either that or Jerron Christian as your starter. I mean, or the other guy. We just, neither one of that. Cornelius.
Neither is a great option, and it does depend on who's there, right? And let's talk about this with the whole, our predictions for the draft. I'm just going to throw out a scenario. Okay. Let's say, because I think, just for my prediction, Young's going to be their number 2 pick. I'm just assuming that at this point for the Redskins. I don't think they do anything creative or bold, or I don't think they'll get the offer they want. So I'm going to assume they draft Chase Young, and then at that third round spot, if a guy like the kid from Auburn, Prince Wanogabo, or however
the really long unpronounceable name.
Yeah. If he's there, or maybe Ezra Cleveland's still there, sure, that's a great pick. Those are 2 left tackle prospects that need work, but they could become starters for you. And maybe you start them by mid-season. It's a little rough, but that's kind of where you're at. But if I don't think at the same time you can't reach for a left tackle if you got a guy graded as a 5th rounder. You can't reach in the 3rd round, I don't think.
Well, I don't think anybody would advocate for that. There are 3rd round-ish tackles. There's not going to be a run on left tackles to that extent.
No. But the guys I named, I think it's fair to say are in that 6 to 10 range at left tackle or at tackle for this draft. I expect at least 5 or 6 to already be gone by the time the 3rd round shows up.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. Clearly, I'm not advocating drafting somebody way out of position just to satisfy a need. It's got to be in the ballpark, and you never know what's going to happen with these drafts.
Frankly, you could also take a gamble on a right tackle and moving him over. It's not ideal, but if you got one who's better prospect-wise.
Yeah, at this point, the answer may be that they're forced to sign one of these decrepit, wheelchair-bound guys, that are 38 years old and bringing them in and just hoping they can make it through the year.
Mm-hmm.
They may not have a choice, at this point. So anyway, that's the poll. We didn't get too many comments because, again, it was only up for a few hours and I didn't even ask for comments. But basically every comment on here is supporting the idea of drafting best player available. So that's where the fans are hugely behind that. I've always said for years that teams just don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Teams flat out don't. There may be 1 or 2 teams that have truly kept to that strategy, but overwhelmingly, teams factor take need into account when they do their draft boards. It's just a fact. No matter what GMs say and lie to you, in which they are. Otherwise, you get really screwed up picks.
I think the only team that's probably done it well is maybe the Patriots, and that's because they've had Tom Brady the whole time. They can pick whoever the hell they want.
It's really easy to do that when you have Tom Brady. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And the Patriots haven't been that successful drafting, by the way. They've had a huge number of busts.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, too. All right,
that was the poll.
That's the poll. I kind of already gave my predictions for the first 3 rounds there. Jamal, do you have a kind of an idea of what you think is going to happen with the Redskins' number 2 pick and the 3rd round pick?
Yeah, Chase Young, first round. This is realistic. This isn't our bold prediction.
Right.
So Chase Young in the first round. 3rd round, I think they do target a tight end. And because I looked at the guy, I'll just stick with Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame.
Not a bad one.
And I'm about to say, and on top of that, he's a good player. Somebody got upset at me when I did my written article on him, thinking that I was comparing him to like the Hall of Fame talent, but his play skill or his play style is similar to Jason Witten. And I hate Jason Witten. I specifically hate Jason Witten in his old age, but even when he was younger, he was a threat. He was productive, and he's a little bit more athletic than Jason Witten. However, again, play styles are similar, but he has a little bit more bounce, a little bit more vertical to him, and he can make a little bit. His plays are a little bit more physical and impressive in the field when the ball is in his hands. So. Jason Witten is my comp for him, but I do like him, and that doesn't scare me away from Kmet. So I think they go tight end.
I don't hate the idea of going tight end, especially if there isn't a left tackle that I think is worth it there. But what do you think about his kind of team? I guess not kind of his teammate Claypool, who's kind of a wide receiver tight end hybrid.
I'm open to the idea because I saw that he was like 6'5", 6'3", 6'5", 6'4", something like that. 240 or 250 and ran a 4.4. So I'm completely open to the idea.
Athletic freak.
Kind of like a Joker type almost, rather than a traditional inline tight end.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, he's more like Jordan Reed in that regard. In my mind, like Jordan Reed was never really a true tight end.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm open to the idea. I have absolutely no problem with him because you can use him in a variety of ways. The issue would be obviously trying to, like, if you're going to use him, you have to make sure that he understands how to block very well. I don't know nothing about him in terms of his actual ability to do both as a receiver and a blocker, but you just have to make sure that he's able to do both because you don't want to be in another situation with Jordan Reed. Where, like, you knew 8 times out of 10, if he's on the field, you know, it's not going to be a run going his way, or it's going to be a pass.
Right. I think you almost have to use him as a split out if you get Claypool. Like, you don't have him line up as a tight end ever.
Well, I mean, the Jay Gruden offense.
To a tight end. That was the possibility heading into the combine. So it's possible, and you can just build some frame on him. If his 4.4 goes down to like a 4.5 or something like that after he bulks up a little bit, and plays at a bigger size. I'm still fine with that. 4.6 for a tight end is perfect. But
listen, they need team speed more than anything.
Yeah,
you know, this team needs speed.
What about you, Steve? What are your moves?
Well, yeah, okay. So my prediction about what the Redskins will do is draft Chase Young at number 2. I don't think they should. And you know, like I've said repeatedly, Chase is an outstanding prospect. You know, looks by all accounts to be an elite pass rusher. You know, great. And not saying we couldn't use him, but I think the more productive use of the pick would be, number 1, a trade back a few spots, let some team grab the quarterback, then you still get an elite prospect and in another, you know, mid to lower number 1 round. I think that's much more valuable. And because quite honestly, we don't really need a pass rusher that much, people. Not right. It's not a desperate need. I'm not saying we couldn't use an upgrade, and Ryan Kerrigan's getting old and all that stuff. But there's some desperate needs out there that I think we can help the team more immediately and in the long run than Chase Young. That's my point. It's been my point from day one. I think Isaiah Simmons is exactly what Ron Rivera wants. The type of player Ron Rivera would want on his defense. Let me say it like that. You know, he had, you know, the kind of the midfield captain, if you will, in Carolina in Luke Kuechly. We don't have that here.
No, we don't.
Now, Isaiah Simmons is a guy, yes, you need a creative coaching staff to use him properly. Didn't we just hire Jack Del Rio, Mr. Linebacker? You know, I mean, you know, we have a coaching staff that could theoretically do this. Like I've already said, Jeff Okudah, we desperately need somebody who can truly cover elite wide receivers, take them out of the game. All of that is just as valuable as a pass rusher. And in this case, in the case of the Redskins already get significant pass rushing. You guys don't want to believe me, but it's true. The stats bear it out. They were number 3 in the NFL in pressures last year, and they were in the top 10. I can't remember the number. Top 10 in overall sacks last year. A lot of pressure directly up the middle. Yes, they could use Chase Young off the edge, but those two players are more valuable. So while I think they will go ahead and select Chase Young, because I think they want a haul. They're open to trading him, but I think they want like an RG3 level haul of picks, and that isn't going to happen, I don't think. So my prediction is Chase Young. My wish is trade back. In absence of trade back, I would draft Isaiah Simmons over Young at 2. In terms of number 3, the third round pick rather, number 2, the second pick in round 3, I'm going to refrain from naming a specific player simply because there's too much of a range. I could throw some names out there, but I think they're going to try to target a left tackle first. And the reason why I say that is I think they like Logan Thomas, as a tight end. I think they're happy with just rolling with him for now. So I don't think they're that desperate to draft a tight end. I don't think they're going to reach for a tight end. If a guy like Kemet is there, I think he's probably going to be gone before the top of the third round. So they might grab him just because he's too valuable to pass up. But it's freaking desperate time at left tackle. They have to do something about left tackle. So I think if there's a guy like Sadiq Charles, maybe,
he should probably be there. I'd think.
Yeah. So if you want me to throw a name out, I'll go with Sadiq Charles.
Okay.
But generally speaking, I think they're going to be aiming to get a left tackle because they have to do something. They cannot roll with Cornelius Lucas and Jaron Christian to protect the blind side of their quarterback who is entering the key year of his career. That's my prediction.
I don't think
and everybody come at me, bro, because everybody's going to do it because I've been preaching Isaiah Simmons for weeks and months, so I'm going to hear about it, and that's fine, but that's what I think they ought to do.
I don't think it's a terrible, thing if they ended up getting Simmons. I would still, you just need to make sure to use him right because he's right. We've seen that story before with these money backer types coming in here and just not working out. So
but Greg Minusky is gone.
Yeah, yes, that is a big factor. It's just that taste is in my mouth.
I agree, but theoretically, Jack Del Rio has been a head coach. He's successful. He's a linebacker himself.
Yeah.
Nobody knows more about linebackers than the combination of Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio. You'd think that they could properly use a guy like that.
That is a fair point. I honestly bet you could go through all 32 teams. No one's got that tandem of linebacker experience.
Probably not. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Okay, let's move on now to our final topic we kind of had for today, and that is Jamal found a story in the Post where who was the writer who met with Kyle Smith? Okay, Les met with Kyle Smith. Yeah. And kind of did an interview, and the topic is basically, could Kyle Smith be the next GM for the Redskins? And it's an interesting one because we know he's a young guy. He's my age. Actually, he's a year younger than me, so he's 35. And the idea of getting a young mind like that in to be your GM, this is one thing the Redskins have never done, really. They don't hire young guys for these leadership roles under Dan Snyder. So I thought that was interesting. But I wanted to get your guys' opinions on the whole idea of Kyle Smith coming in as GM. What do you think of him from what we've been exposed about him? There's just not a lot out there on the Rolodex, partly.
Yeah, so I think this is a blanket statement, but it's also true. This draft for Kyle is big in a way because his name is solely attached to it. And what I mean by that is, in the past, now, this is the case that it's a collaborative effort in a general sense. Like, we all know that draft is collaborative efforts. But in the past, with the Redskins, they preached and emphasized everybody was involved.
Sure.
They didn't give one person the sole responsibility or put his name or his footprint or anything like that on a draft. And that was the case for when did McLuhan get fired? 2016.
I think it was 17. Wasn't it?
17. Yeah.
17?
All
That sounds right.
Okay, so about 3 years. 3 years, they said this is all a collaborative effort. This year, you're going into a period where, well, this is uncertain times, and this is unfortunate for Kyle. But, his genius, quote unquote, is going to have to really be on display, because you're going to have to rely on your gut instincts, what you've known for X amount of months, what you studied for, what you've listened to your scouts for. All these opinions, they're all going to have to be in the interviews, of course, with the players, because you can still do that. But all of this is going to be his name attached to it. He's the VP of personnel, or something to that degree. I think he's VP of personnel, or president. Yeah, VP of player personnel. Sorry about that. So yeah, his name's going to be attached to it. And this draft is really big for him. And not only this one, this is the biggest. But not only this one, but the next year's too, is going to be big. But this first one is going to have his whole name behind it. So he's going to have to show out and do the best he can in these circumstances. Because if it doesn't work out, then that's unfortunate. But this is his time to shine.
Mm-hmm. My take's a little bit different than that. First of all, let me explain. I know Alex and Jamal know this, but for the benefit of people listening who don't understand, Kyle Smith is the vice president of player personnel, and what that means is he runs the college and pro scouting rooms right now. The general manager on most teams is a level above that, and the general manager manages all things football operations. That includes like travel arrangements, the equipment guys, the training staff, the coaching staff. The scouting is just one part of that. The reason why I kind of have an alternate view of this is that right now Ron Rivera is performing the role of GM. Mm-hmm. He might not have the title, but he is the de facto GM right now. Kyle Smith is already running the draft room, and he's running the pro scouting room, which means the free agency, okay? Now, the Redskins might promote him to GM to keep him because he's good, and that would be a way to do it. But practically speaking, Ron Rivera is already doing it, and Rivera isn't going to surrender authority to Kyle Smith. Okay, the Redskins have made clear from the beginning that they are now a Bill Belichick-style coaching-centered organization. Mm-hmm. So I frankly don't think it's really necessary to promote Kyle Smith, and I think even if they do, he's not going to really have the full authority of the GM in a traditional sense, in that the GM sort of has authority over the coach. So I think even if they could give him the title, but I think it's going to be a title without a distinction. To Jamal's point, if they really screw up the draft, it's going to fall on him, but I think they just probably fire him and then bring in whoever Ron Rivera thinks to be the director of player personnel. Because I think no matter who has the title, this is Ron Rivera's show, and he's running things, and he's basically the GM. That's the way I look at it.
Well, and I think we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we also have Doug Williams in there, who a lot of people thought was going to become the GM and still hasn't.
He's the director of player development now.
Right.
He's completely out of it.
Yeah, he's been moved to almost I don't know.
He's you know who he is? He's your high school guidance counselor. You want an analogy? That's what he's doing.
That's I think actually a good analogy, and not terrible for him. I think
I don't mean it as an insult. I mean that's what the player, at a professional level, that's what he's doing.
Right. And like I said, I think he's actually a good fit for that, because I think he's you're talking about an NFL lifer. The Kyle Smith, he's been here about 5 years now altogether?
It's so incestuous, man. I mean, his dad was here.
Right.
Remember his dad is A.J. Smith, who was with the Chargers and wasn't here for a cup of coffee or something.
But it's fair to say that after Scott McLuhan left, Kyle Smith's star began to rise in the Redskins organization. He got more and more control over these drafts and things like that. And I have huge problems with how this roster's been built the last couple of years, but the drafts themselves, they've made a lot of good picks in those last couple of years. And I know some of them are, Jay picks. Some of them were Bruce picks. The ones that I think we don't hear about, it was this guy who stood on the table, or that guy. That's probably when you're hearing it's actually Kyle and the other scouts who are making those decisions, or who scouted these guys. So like if you look at the last, let's say 3 seasons, it's been good drafts. Not every pick's a home run. A lot of these guys are just depth, but like you look at all the guys we have at linebacker, like Cole Holcomb and Josh Harvey Clemens. Those picks, they're not starters, but they're good contributors. And if
they're also doing all at the top of the draft, though.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, because don't forget, Scott McLuhan blew Josh Doxson.
Yes, he did.
Didn't he draft Trent Murphy? Was that his pick? I mean,
I don't know if that was him or not.
But maybe not. But he was a second-round pick.
Right.
He was a bust ultimately. And there are 2 or 3 others like that. They haven't done.
The 2 years McLuhan was here, not good drafts.
No, and so they've done pretty well. I mean, we can talk about how the future of the defensive line is going to look in a year, but I mean, nobody would debate that John Allen was a good pick and Deron Payne was a good pick, regardless of whether or not they let one of those guys go. So they've done well at the top of the draft. It's so critical not to blow those.
It is.
You blow the RG3 pick. You trade 2. You pick him and you lose 2 other first-round picks in the process.
You said it's back a decade when that happened.
You lose 3. You basically lost 3 years of first-round picks because of RG3. Josh Doxson, no value whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Trent Murphy, no value whatsoever. Preston Smith is gone. Wasn't he a second-round pick? Gone.
But by the way, to answer your question, just because Trent Murphy was before McLuhan because he was one of those picks when we didn't have a first rounder.
Okay, but my point stays is the same. I mean, you can't blow all these. You're going to blow them sometimes,
right?
But you can't blow these year after year after year, and they've had 2 straight years of good picks.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've always said
Montez Sweat seems to be another one. So they've had hopefully 3 years straight of great, of solid, good picks at the top.
I've always kind of pointed to the whole idea that you get 7 picks normally. If you can land 2 guys who are good, that's actually about league average, and that's fine. But what's always killed the Redskins is not the drafting; it's their ability to retain these guys long term. So, that is where I want to see Smith maybe moved up into the GM role. The thing that killed us was we weren't identifying our own talent and retaining them. And if this guy's got an eye for identifying his own talent, then that's worth keeping.
I guess my point with the Kyle Smith thing is that I don't think people should get too wrapped up around what his title is because right now he's already running all things player personnel, college and pro.
Sure.
Meaning free agency and the draft. Even if they give him the title of GM, does anybody think he's going to be telling Ron Rivera what to do? Anybody? No. Bueller? Of course not. So Ron is basically going to be the GM. In an all practical sense, Ron is going to be in charge no matter who has what title. So I don't think it really matters. I think they might give him the GM title just to retain him and keep him so they don't lose him to another team. That's what I think.
Maybe so. But, I think, as that article said, we will probably know within a few days of the draft. Like, if this draft goes well and Ron's happy and Kyle gets that title, I will actually be interested to see how that, if any other shakeups happen in the coaching or scouting department.
Well, if scouts get fired, it's always right after the draft.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I fully expect us to have some stuff to talk about after the draft in that regard.
Yeah.
Front office stuff is always fun, right?
We think it is.
Yeah, because we don't know too much about that one.
No.
We get to throw out guesstimations and stuff like that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, the one GM I interacted with looked like an accountant. If you saw him at Price Waterhouse Coopers, he would have fit in real well.
Well, I mean, think of the other guys how many GMs don't look like that though? Like Charlie Casserly looks like he would be a divorce lawyer or something,
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Most of these guys that's what they look like. They're not all going to be like ex-linemen.
I would tell you who it was, but I don't want the people to know what team I represented, so I don't want to say.
That's fine. All right. I don't know if we really had any other topics we wanted to cover today.
I have one more thing real fast.
Oh, we do? Okay.
Yeah, this is less Redskins, but we really haven't talked about in all these weeks and months is just generally speaking what we think is going to happen at the top of the draft. I'm not talking about just Redskins. what are the top few picks going to look like? What are these teams going to do? For example, I think Cincinnati seems to be locked into Joe Burrow. There's no doubt. If we're locked into Chase Young, is Miami going to take Tua? I don't know. Then you have Detroit. Detroit, can't really get rid of Matt Stafford. What do they really need? Do they need a wide receiver? You're looking at, Judy. Do they want to take the defensive lineman from Auburn, Derek Brown? Then you come, down to, the Chargers desperately need a quarterback. You're not going to convince me that Tyrod Taylor is their quarterback. So there's probably the Herbert pick unless they move up. There's a lot of intrigue, I think, at the top of the draft. So what do you guys give me some general thoughts about that?
Well, Jamal mentioned the idea of the Patriots trading up for a quarterback, and it wouldn't surprise me totally if Bill Belichick called one of his old alumni, proteges, whatever you want to call them, and was able to get that number 3 pick. From Detroit.
You know how much draft capital that would
if
cost?
you need a quarterback, you need a quarterback. That wouldn't be if they maybe really like Tua or they really like Herbert, why not make that call?
That's a lot of draft picks. He might do it. You might be right.
But it's also
picks.
Bill Belichick. He plays by his own rules.
Except Bill Belichick has a history of trading down, not up.
Yeah, but maybe for a quarterback, that's when he changes it.
Perhaps.
So that would be one thing I'd look out for is them trading there, because I think we've all heard that the Lions don't really want to be picking at 3.
Right.
Every mock draft seems to have the Lions trading out.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's a high spot for them.
Yeah.
Meaning, if they're projecting properly, they know who the first 2 draft picks are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves them in a position to accumulate assets and draft capital. And I agree. I don't know if they necessarily don't want the number 3 pick, but I think they're the spot that can get a haul in a sense, and it's going to be something that's hard to turn down. So to that degree, I say that maybe they're more willing than any other team in the top 5 to move out of their picks. Move out of their slot. But it's interesting. We already know. I'm not about to speculate with the first 2 draft picks, but I do think a couple quarterbacks at the very least can go top 10. And the Chargers are in need. We know that the Lions are in a particular situation where they know they like Stafford, but they know they don't like Stafford at his price and his rate of injury.
And his age, yeah. Yeah,
it's the age is fine though, given the recent stories with quarterbacks playing closer to 40.
Sure.
So I would say the age is fine. But yeah, it's they're just in a situation quarterbacks always are the ultimate variable, because you don't see certain quarterbacks make it in the top the first round. For example, Tua slipping is very logical to say. But when teams get desperate, you can't account for that. You never can. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I do think this is another draft where a lot of quarterbacks are going to go in the first round, but you just don't know where. But I think quite a couple, 3 or 4 maybe, can go in the top 10. Just because somebody's going to get desperate. And somebody's going to take that chance on Tua, whether they really should or shouldn't. Somebody's going to take that chance on Tua.
Yeah, I think we all know that.
Somebody's going to take a chance on Jordan Love, too.
Yeah.
They probably shouldn't. You want a quick Matthew Stafford trivia question?
Sure.
Okay, who was Matthew Stafford's center in high school on his high school football team?
Is it Matt Burke or somebody? Is it another NFL guy?
Multiple choices or anything?
No choices. You just have to guess it.
Yeah, I'm shooting blanks here. I don't know.
You ready for this? Clayton Kershaw. Dodgers ace, future Hall of Fame pitcher Clayton Kershaw was Matthew Stafford's center in high school.
I'm shocked Kershaw was ever big enough to be a lineman of any kind, even at a high school level.
6'3", 6'4".
I'm talking weight, though.
I know, but you're not talking about LSU. You're talking about a high school football
Yeah,
team.
and I realize in high school you still can be like a 200-pound offensive lineman, but
especially at center.
Yeah.
But that's, I heard Stafford talking about it on the radio. They're both from Highland Park in Dallas. And heard Stafford talking about it on the radio, saying Kershaw was his center, and then at some point Kershaw, all of a sudden had a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, and that ended that basically.
I mean, okay, so I get it, he played center, but if you're a pitcher, how are you not playing quarterback too? You know what I mean?
Well, because Matthew Stafford is your quarterback. That's why.
Clayton Kershaw's got a better arm than Matthew Stafford.
Clayton Kershaw has a better pitcher's arm. There's a difference.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. Anyway, at that point, I don't want to waste time. I just thought that was interesting trivia.
That is.
Matthew Stafford talking about that on the radio a while ago.
Every once in a while you hear about athletes and the other sports they played in high school, and I always like to do a what if X player.
Certainly, Clayton Kershaw at center seems totally out of left field, for
Right.
sure. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
No pun intended with the left field thing.
I think we all know half the guys who play in the NFL probably play some serious hoops in high school, and vice versa.
Oh, yeah. They're all better athletes than us by far in every sport.
Right.
Baseball, basketball, they probably
Right.
done a few things.
Right.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
So
Not
there you
hockey.
go.
I don't think you see many guys doubled hockey and then
There's not a lot of hockey players in like Atlanta.
Right.
Or
Right.
South Texas somewhere.
Right. Well, the football
Lacrosse,
hotbeds.
maybe. Lacrosse, maybe, depending on where you're from.
Right.
Hockey, no.
Right. All right, well, that should do it for this episode, the Draft Spectacular, because, again, it's quiet. Not a lot going on. Thank you a lot, stupid virus plague.
As a programming note,
Right.
we are, unless something crazy happens, we will not do a show in the middle of the draft. If something nuts happens, I wouldn't put it past us if we had some like short emergency podcast or something maybe.
Sure.
But the plan is for right now to do a complete draft recap on a normal Monday episode. We will have all the written content.
Right. We'll
covering the picks
record
in between
on
there.
Sunday after all the draft.
Again, unless something truly nuts happens, that's the plan.
Right. So don't look out for anything. We're hoping to do something crazy, but then we all realize we have lives. So
Yeah. Although we're also all stuck in our house all day.
not me. Remember, I had to go in a bunch of this.
Oh, that's true.
This
yeah.
week.
I violated curfew. I violated the.
Yeah, you violated the
jail
curfew. I had to go in to, battle the COVID zombies, and
it felt good violating. I liked it.
Steve's first act of rebellion ever in his life.
Oh no! Well, number one, I violated this curfew 3 times for work, just in the past 3 weeks. Number one, I rebel in my own way, just not in the way you would, Alex.
Yeah, I've somehow never been arrested with all my rebelliousness. So that's good.
See, you don't survive for 24 years in the military by doing the type of rebellion you're talking about.
Right. All right, guys. That should take us through this week. Stay safe out there and enjoy the draft.